Hi, Professor Sandra. Here is my speech. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you're doing well. I've been praying for your son. I've been thinking a lot about him lately. Um, just thinking about my boys, and just thinking about what you might be dealing with. You know, not knowing what happened with your son, and just know that you have people that are thinking about you, that are praying for you, praying for your family. And I think about your daughter as well, who has the same condition I do with the kidneys, and that's a lot to deal with. So I think uh, as a student, you can sometimes think about your professors kind of being superheroes, uh, but obviously your people too. Um, which is the understatement of the I guess of the hour, but of course you are, um, and you're dealing with all of the things that you're dealing with on top of being a professor. Um, so I can't imagine doing that, and so I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to do this work um, in a speech format, and here we go. So I work for the Bronx Freedom Fund. It's a charitable bail organization. It was founded in 2007. Uh, Robin Steinberg, the person who founded the Bronx Defenders, which is a public defense office, um, had a really simple idea. What if we paid bail for our clients so they um, didn't have to take plea bargains? What a lot of people don't realize is that 98.9% of all misdemeanor convictions in this country are by plea bargains. That means that if you think of a show like Law and Order, for instance, where everyone um, is going to court, and a lot of people are being arrested for heinous things. That's really not the reality. Most people are arrested because the neighborhoods are over policed, and then they sit in jail because they can't afford their bail. So what our organization does is it pays bail for people who can't afford it. New York State is the only state that has a restriction on what a charitable bail organization could do. So we can only pay bail for misdemeanor convictions. That means that if you're charged with a felony, we're not allowed to pay your bail. The reason why that is um, problemsome is because people will be arrested for anything, and they'll be charged with a felony. The district attorney knows that they're going to drop the felony eventually, because it's very hard to prove a felony charge, and they're going to drop it to a misdemeanor, but they keep it as a felony for as long as they can, so that you're more likely to take a plea. And again, 98.9% of all misdemeanor convictions is because of pleas. So that's frustrating for us. So we can't pay bails for felonies. We can only pay for misdemeanor charges. We can also only pay bails that are $2,000 and less. So if a bail is $2,500, which some judges set bails at $2,500 just so we can't pay the bail, we can't touch it. The way bail is supposed to work is it's supposed to be an incentive for you to come back to court. You give the court your money, they let you out of jail, and then once your trial is over, you get the money back. That's what's supposed to happen. In reality, most people can't afford the bail that they're given, so they just sit in jail. In fact, 70% of everyone who is incarcerated in America is there pre-trial, and most of them are there because they can't afford bail, which is a staggering amount when you think about it. Um, there was a study in 2015, and it showed in New York only 15% of people given a $500 bail could afford it. That means that most people do not have 500 plus extra dollars that they can just come up with to get out of jail. And when you can't afford it, you sit in jail, and the district attorney knows that you just want to get out. So what they'll typically do after you've been in jail for a month or so, they'll say, hey, just say that you did the crime, and you'll leave today. You'll get out of jail today, and yeah, you'll have a conviction, but hey, you get to go home. So that's what most people do, and most people plead so that it's so that they can go home. So what we found is that even though the people that we paid bail for don't have any financial incentive to come back to court, 90% of the people that we've paid bail for make all their court cases. That is because they want to prove their innocence, and for the small amount of people who actually statistically have done what they shouldn't have done, they just want to get it over with and move on with their life. So, of everyone that we pay bail for, half of the cases are dismissed. That means that because the district attorney couldn't get our clients to there was no incentive for them to take a plea bargain because they were already out of jail. So they just dropped the case because most people are arrested for not real issues. It's there's a theory called broken window policing, and basically the concept is you arrest for almost anything, the pettiest things, and the more arrests you have, the theory is the more likely people aren't going to do more serious crimes because they're scared of getting arrested for anything. And that has been the way most police forces in our country do police, by this broken mirrors philosophy. And what it's done is it's made black and brown over police communities disproportionately arrested. And it's not an issue of there's more crime, it's an issue of what is being policed. For instance, if you look at the Upper East Side versus East Harlem, where those neighborhoods are right next to each other, but which neighborhood has more arrests for more arrests? Well, it's going to be East Harlem. But which neighborhood has more tax evasion? It would probably be the Upper East Side, but the police aren't patrolling the streets looking for tax evasion. The police are roaming the streets looking for broken window-esque chargeable offenses, and that's why the poorest people who typically are black and brown are disproportionately in jails, even in communities where there is a very small minority population. There are jails. In the jails, there's a disproportionate amount of people who are of color in these jails. So, like I said, half of the cases are dismissed of our clients, and the other half result in violations, which is in New York State is not a crime. So our system works very well, and it helps a lot of people. So now I'm going to discuss our mission statement. This is our mission statement. The Bronx Freedom Fund envisions a society that humanizes instead of criminalizes. We restore the presumption of innocence by keeping clients with their families, at their jobs, and out of jail while they await trial. We work tirelessly to fight mass incarceration and the criminalization of race and poverty, and to end the cash bail system as it exists. So, does our mission state is our mission statement useful as a starting point for strategic planning and goal development? Yes. Our mission statement is useful as a starting point because it speaks to an all-encompassing worldview. Every plan and goal we have can be viewed through the singular lens that asks the question, is what we're doing humanizing, or criminalizing? It allows us to have a holistic perspective, and in that way we can have a guideline for all our initiatives. Our initiative is what we're doing, helping someone to regain their humanity, or is what we're doing strengthening the argument that this person is a criminal and should be treated as such. So now I'm going to go through the mission statement and talk about how our operations mirror each aspect of the mission statement, and it will be easier to see how you can tell that we're trying to humanize versus criminalize. But we do fall short in some areas, and I'll address that as well. So, commenting on how the organization's operations align with the mission, and giving examples. So let me just go through each part of the mission statement. Humanizes instead of criminalizes. So I'm what's called a client advocate, and in client advocacy, one of our goals is to help our clients see that they are capable of making choices that are beneficial for their success, and that they're not screw ups. That what happened to them is a circumstance, but it isn't evidence of them being failures at life. So when I in client advocacy, if I help a person get a job, I'm not telling them what job that they should apply for. I'm trying to find out about their skills, trying to find out about their desires, trying to find out about their work history, and help and allow them to help me see what they're good at, and where I could come alongside them to help them in the goals that they already have. And that is a way that I try to humanize the work we do, and because when you're arrested, treated like a criminal, your choice is being taken away. So we want to help our clients see that they have choices, and to encourage them to make choices, and for them not to put us on a pedestal like we're the experts, but they're their own experts in their lives, and see how we could just come alongside them to help them fulfill the goals that they're already wanting to accomplish. So the next part of the mission statement is restore the presumption of innocence. So when we review cases to see if we're going to bail a person out, we can't bail out every person every case that we get, because we just don't have the finances to do that. So we have to see if this person has a history of coming back to court. We have to see if we can make sure that we can contact this person in the future to remind them about the court cases. So, but restoring the presumption of innocence, when we get a case, we're starting from a place of wanting to pay that person's bail, and then looking for support of that decision. So we believe an accusation is simply that. Accusation is accusation. You're innocent until proven guilty, and you're either innocent until proven guilty or you're not. We don't believe there's this gray area there. So when we get a case, before we even open it up, we're saying this person is legally innocent. We want to pay their bail. Let me look for evidence that it would be a good decision to pay that person to bail. And that is one way we try to presume the presumption of innocence in our operations. Next part of the mission statement is keeping clients with their families. So once we get a case, we move as quickly as possible. When we get that referral, especially if we get it on a Friday, if we get a referral on Friday, we got to get that. If we're going to pay that bail, we got to do that before the weekend, because we don't have the same amount of staff working on the weekends, and the jails don't have the same staff working on the weekends. And sometimes if a person is arrested on a Friday, the earliest we can, if we don't get everything done quickly, the earliest we can get them out is Monday. And a few days may not seem like a lot, but when you're locked in a cell, seconds feel like hours, and so much can happen while a person is away from their family, and so we want to work super fast, especially if we get a referral on a weekend. So next part of the mission statement is keeping people at their jobs. If we find out that a person is in that that person whose referral we're working on is in danger of missing their shift, we will move at double, sometimes triple time to get that person out of jail in time to make their shift. There's been a few times that I've went to pay a person's bail at 2-3 a.m. just so I can get them out of jail before they're sent to a bigger jail that would make the process take even longer. And a lot of people have jobs that they just can't miss a shift. People who can call out sick and have unlimited time off and can have substitutes. I mean, that's not most people. Most people have jobs working at fast food restaurants and manual labor, and there's some people who want those jobs. If you miss a shift, they're ready to fire you and get somebody else. So when we find out that a person is in danger of missing a shift, and we know we're going to pay their bail, sometimes we just work super fast. Super duper fast to make sure that we could get them out in time. And then we also, as part of client advocacy, also work with job creating agencies. They get clients new employment opportunities, and we have a real good track record with that. So the next part of the mission statement is out of jail while they await trial. So we recognize simply being away from the cell statistically strengthens your chance of being found innocent. So one of the things that's kind of interesting is most people who remain in jail sad. Most people who remain in jail for the duration of the trial are found guilty. That means that 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 if statistically speaking, if you're awaiting trial while from jail, you're more likely to be found guilty. Maybe it's because when they bring you to court, you're in a jumpsuit with handcuffs. Um, you aren't when you're coming from the street. You're in a suit or whatever clothes you wore to trial that day, um, and you're not in handcuffs. So I mean, you look innocent for one thing, and that probably affects how judges see you, and also you don't have the incentive to take a plea because you're already out. Um, Along with that, we recognize the collateral consequences of jail. For instance, if you're in jail, you can't pick up your kid, and it may be the ACS is now involved because you couldn't pick up your kid from school. Obviously, you're not working, so you can't pay rent, and you end up being homeless. So when you go to jail, your whole family is doing that time with you, and it's when we think about how many people are affected by one person being taken from their home, it's more than a notion that we just willy nilly as a society are okay with putting people in jail simply because they can't afford to get out. So, next is working tirelessly. We work smart, long, and hard. That's just part of the culture. Um, I mean, I know that before I got sick, there was definitely weeks that I worked 60 hours a week, making sure that people had a better chance at freedom. Um, Next is fight mass incarceration. So we're doing that by limiting the jail population, by bailing out as many people as we can responsibly. Um, uh, and I see him at the 22-minute mark, so I'll try to wrap this up and not go into so much detail. But that's kind of self-explanatory. But I will add that we want to bail people out responsibly. For example, if a person if they're going back into the situation that may have led them to be arrested in the first place, then um, we want to make sure that they're going to a safe place where they're not going to be around influences that are negative. So it's not just paying a person's bail, it's making sure that the environment that they are coming to can support them in their pursuit of justice. Next is fighting criminalization of race and poverty. So, as I mentioned before, we recognize that blacks and poor people, or people who are are financially poor at the moment, are disproportionately affected. You think about it, um, even if you're a police officer who wants to do good, you're going to be interacting with people who have less money more often. For instance, if you're a traffic cop, who's more likely going to have a suspended license or a suspended registration, not suspended registration or old registration, with someone who can't afford to get the registration time? So that's going to be a person who's poor. So you may have justice in mind while you're policing, but the system is still designed to to um, interact with people who are poor. And if you don't have money, you simply don't have money. So it's not as if being arrested puts more money in your pocket. Like arresting someone for not having money seems to suggest that they do have the money, they're just not using it for um, wise things, and that's just not statistically true. Um, people, uh, statistically speaking, most people, if they have the money, they're going to use it for responsible things. But there's this lie in society that we say that people who are poor are that way because they're irresponsible. Um, when that's just not the case. Um, in the issue of over policing, if you have 10 cops on one block and two on the other block, which block is going to have more arrests? I mean, the one with more cops. I mean, that's just it's really simple thinking, actually, and we're fighting against that mentality. And when I'm uh, paying someone's bail and speaking with them, I try to help them see how what they're going through is part of a systematic problem that was designed to criminalize them. And when they recognize that, it's actually freeing. It's actually freeing to realize that you are what you're doing is that you've been targeted, that you're not a screw up, that the system is actually designed to make it more difficult for you. And the last part of the mission statement is in the cash bail system as it exists. So our statistics show people don't need money over the head to motivate them to come back to court. Like I said, 97% of all our clients make all the court dates and they have no money of their own to make them want to come back to court. So we're showing that people don't need money over the head to come back to court, and that's why the bail law has changed. And a lot less people are going to jail now with bail. So a couple suggestions of strengthening the alignment between mission and organizational culture, just real quick, because I see I'm at the 27 minute mark. So the humanizes instead of criminalizing. We don't have a strong system in place to turn clients into employees. So our work is very us helping them, but it would be way more powerful if it wasn't us helping them. It was all of. I don't have a good way of saying it. I'm sorry, but basically, what I'm trying to get at is it would be more powerful if we could empower our clients to become client advocates like myself, to teach them the skills so that they could do this job. So it's not that we're giving people things, that they're learning things, and they themselves are recreating the success that we've been able to help them receive. So to my knowledge, only one person in our company is a former client. And it would be great if we actually had a system where more people got that opportunity. Because I speak with clients all the time that want to do what I'm doing, but there's kind of like there's a lot of things you have to learn and able to do this job that and it's more than a notion to do it, but we don't have a system created because that's just hasn't been a priority. So that would be a better way to humanize our clients by giving them an opportunity to do the same work. The next thing I'll talk about, restore the presumption of innocence. Sometimes our organization chooses not to pay bail for domestic violence charges, and that goes against our philosophy of a charge is just a charge. We recognize that there are victims in crimes, and we have to look at every case individually and not make blanket statements about whether we're going to pay a person pay a person's bail just based on the charge, because we're saying that you're guilty. If we're doing that, we're saying that you are guilty if we're not going to pay your bail because you have certain charges. And I've met with lots of clients who the neighbor called the police, and yes, they were arguing, but neither them nor their significant other wanted to press charges. But now they're arrested for domestic violence, and there's an order of protection, and they can't come back to their home. And that's not what either them or their significant other wanted. So their agency is taken away. They're being criminalized, and as an organization, we shouldn't be a part of that process. And then the criminalization of race and poverty in general. There's a lack of Black leadership in our organization, and that's definitely troubling when 90-something% of our clients are Black. So we have an organization that is made up of mostly, I would say mostly white, and there's actually a lot of non-white people, but it's not a majority Black organization, but most of our clients are Black. So it's so much more powerful when the people who are helping you look like you. That tells you that you can build yourself up when you're seeing your people who look like you build into you. And our organization tends to hire people who would agree with that, but don't look like the people that we're paying bail for. So those are 3 areas that I think could be strengthened, and that would help fuse the mission and the organizational culture together. So I went double my time. Professor, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'll send this over to you now. I'm sorry for going over, but thank you again.